Get started with some politics, okay? And some political news, some headlines emanating from the state of California. That's where former vice president and presidential nominee Kamala Harris holds a substantial lead in the polls to succeed Governor Gavin Newsom. Now, Harris has been relatively quiet since losing the presidential race in November, and she hasn't indicated if she even wants to run for governor in her home state. However, this recent Emerson College poll commissioned by Next Star Media asked registered Democrats in California who they would theoretically support in 2026, and the overwhelming majority of 57% named Harris. The next closest candidate was former Representative Katie Porter at 9%. You may recall that Kamala Harris is no stranger to California politics, as she represented the state in the U.S. Senate from 2017 to 2021. And she served as California's Attorney General for the 6 years prior to that. So one would stand to reason that, you know what, she could end up running for governor of California. Let me say this. I would advise that. I would advise that. Because when you just lost the presidential election by more than 2 million votes, that can't be ignored. It just can't be ignored. Now, this woman's resume, I don't like the way that I hear folks on the right talking about it. I mean, you won. Do you have to be sore winners? You know, they rip her at every turn. They question her intelligence. I don't appreciate that. You know, she's a graduate, got a law degree. She's a former district attorney in San Francisco, where she served for 7 years. She's a former state attorney general in California for 6 years. Obviously, she was a U.S. senator from California for 4 years, from 2017 to 2021, as I articulated. And she's the vice president of the United States. That's a pretty impressive resume. Okay. Did she lose to Donald Trump? Yes, she did. Do I think that the Democrats are making a mistake when they act like there's not this mandate, this Trump mandate that's completely overblown? I think the Democrats are tone deaf and they're missing it. Donald Trump didn't get 50% of the vote. He got like 49.8% of the vote, if I remember correctly. As a matter of fact, I need to look that up again because I want to make sure that my numbers are right about that. But my point to y'all is that when I'm thinking about this, that's not the argument for the Democrats to be making. People are getting tired of that. You know, you lost, period. And just for specifics, just to make sure that we have this out there, I got the stats right in front of me. Trump won 77,284,118 votes, which amounted to 49.8% of the votes cast for president. That was the second highest vote total in U.S. history, trailing only Joe Biden, who won in 2020, receiving 81,284,666 votes. As I said back then, it wasn't voting for Biden. It was voting against Trump at that particular moment in time. There was chaos in the streets of America. People didn't like the noise, the chaos, the lack of structure and discipline and what have you, and they went in a different direction. Nevertheless, Trump won 3,059,799 more popular votes in 2024 in this latest presidential election than he had won in 2020, and 14,299,293 more than he had won in 2016. So he now, meaning Donald Trump, now holds the record for the most cumulative popular votes won by any presidential candidate in U.S. history, even surpassing Barack Obama, although Trump ran 3 times and Obama only ran twice. So we got to take that into consideration. Kamala Harris, for her part, 74,999,166 votes, which amounted to 48.3% of the votes cast. So she lost the popular vote, 49.8% to 48.3%, okay? So she won by 1.5% of the votes. That was 6,285,500 fewer popular votes than Biden won in 2020. But 774,847 more than Trump won in 2020. Remember, 156 million people voted in 2024. That's the second largest total voter turnout in U.S. history in absolute terms. It also is just the second time that more than 140 million people voted in a presidential election. So there are the facts. And having said that, getting back to Kamala Harris, let's be very, very clear. I don't think she should run for president in 2028. Let me say it like it is. The reason why is because I think the run to the gubernatorial seat, the governor's seat in California, is a given. I think if Kamala Harris runs for the governor of California, she'll win. And if you know that that's as close to a surefire thing that you could get, why bypass that in hopes that 2 years later you're going to run for the presidency again and win? I don't think that is going to happen. I think that's a very risky proposition. I think the fact that Trump won the popular vote and won the Electoral College vote sends a clear message against policies that the Democratic Party was spewing. And I think this argument that a bevy of Democrats are making that there was no mandate, he didn't even get 50% of the vote, so there's not this strong mandate that the country wants to move in a different direction, blah, blah, blah. There's a strong enough mandate that the American people didn't like what the hell they were hearing from the Democratic Party. See, this is why Stephen A. Smith, your friendly neighborhood sports analyst, is on the damn polls as a presidential candidate. That's why. You really, really think that I think for 1 second that I'm qualified to be the president of the United States? Once upon a time, I would have never thought that. But then I was reminded, what does it take to be the president of the United States of America? Oh, you got to be 35 years of age. Oh, you got to live in the United States for the last 14 years. Oh, you got to be a born citizen of the United States of America. You got to be born here. Born here, 35 years of age, and living in the country for the last 14 years. That's it. Do y'all know that some would argue you might need tougher qualifications to get a job at Walmart or Target? I mean, I'm being facetious, but you get my point. That's utterly ridiculous. You would think that the standards need to be harder, but they're not. So in that regard, maybe I'm qualified. But ladies and gentlemen, my life is good. Last time I checked, they don't pay the president how much I'm going to get paid or how much I'm getting paid. They get all into your personal business. Ain't nobody think about my personal business. Not that I have anything to hide, but ain't nobody think about my personal business. I don't have to sit up there and have my whole life put on Front Street because I'm asking to legislate and govern and oversee the lives of more than 350 million American citizens. Hell no. Am I interested? No. But if the American people reached out to me and said, we need you, brother. We need you. I'm not lying when I say I'd consider it. I just consider that close to an impossibility. And it does make me scratch my head like I got damn dandruff in my hair. It does make me scratch my head profusely when I imagine what the hell are y'all thinking? And then I came to this conclusion. You know what they thinking? They sick and tired of the bullshit that we've been hearing. Identity politics, woke culture, cancel culture. Not prioritizing quality of life nearly as much as we should. Inflation, immigration, crime in the streets of America, national security, global affairs. We weren't hearing what we want to hear, and the Democrats don't have a voice. Now, a couple of politicians that I've spoken to have said the right message to me. You know what? It ain't about the midterms. It's about what you do before the midterms. So you can win the midterms. So you can regain some prowess so the Trump administration can't just do whatever it is that they want to do. You know why I haven't raised holy hell about DOGE? The Department of Government Efficiency. You know, I haven't raised holy hell about some of the things that Trump has done, DEI and all of this other stuff. Do you know why I haven't raised, completely gone nuclear about it? Because the Democrats messed up by putting them in that position. You want to bring up 34 felony counts? You want to bring up 2 impeachments? You want to hear people calling him a felon? Well, then why did you lose to him? Because you were busy talking about that instead of what really, really concerns the American people. Let me break something down to y'all very, very simple. Griff, Galen, and you guys, I want you to listen to this. It's very important. It's very important. Because the American people don't know, apparently the Democratic Party doesn't recognize that the American people like Griff, like Galen, like Sherry, like Rashawn, like Jennifer, like Izzo, like Fudge and a bunch of names that y'all don't know, but these are people that I know very well. People don't realize from the Democratic Party, they don't realize that y'all don't give a damn about the kind of stuff that they were talking about. Y'all don't care that Trump got convicted of 34 felony counts. You know why? Because he convinced half the American people it was politicized. You don't care that he was impeached twice because it was completely pushed forward by the Democrats and completely rejected by the Republicans because they were making the case that it was being politicized. They cared about the price of eggs. They cared about the fact that we went to the supermarket and you could only get a carton of eggs. You can't even get two. They're limiting it. They cared about the price of gas. That's what they cared about. Why am I bringing all of this up? Because Kamala Harris, for the last 107 days before the election, was the face of the Democratic Party. And I just read to you the numbers. I think the woman's smart. I think the woman has accomplished a great deal in her life. I don't think she's going away. But I think she'll have no choice but to, if she passes on a gubernatorial race in California in 2026, to run for the presidency in 2028. The Democratic Party, as we know it, is done. It's done. Remember when the riots were going on in the aftermath of George Floyd's passing? Y'all remember that? Remember how the Democratic congressional figures in the House put on the African scarves and they all took a knee? Did you really think that the American people thought that was sincere and genuine? Did you really think that was going to curry favor? All it did was highlight how divided we had come and that Donald Trump needed to go. And the Republicans bloviating about some red wave that was coming in 2022. That didn't happen. But the point of all of it is that the Democrats had opportunities. And once again, they didn't listen to the American people. I've said this on many occasions. When it comes to the Republicans, the Republican voter out there said, we don't give a damn what y'all say. We want Donald Trump. We want him. We don't want Nikki Haley. We don't want DeSantis. We don't want Ramaswamy. We don't want Christie. We don't want anybody. We want him. But the Democrats will tell you it's Hillary's turn. It's Joe Biden's turn. We're going to push Biden out. It's Kamala Harris's turn. And we're going to force feed our base to embrace and accept who we choose, as opposed to listening to what the American people choose. The last time one could legitimately argue that the Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States of America has been legitimately handpicked by the American people was Barack Obama in 2007. That's it. Ain't happened since. People tired of it. I'm bringing all of that up because I want to say to Kamala Harris, run for the governor's seat of California. It's a mess in the state. Yes, Gavin Newsom is saying, there's a lot of misinformation out there. People are not getting it. And yes, he might have taken unnecessary hits and unfair hits for the wildfires that took place because there's little to nothing that you could have done about a natural disaster of that magnitude with that wind coming at 90 miles an hour. I get that part. How do you explain being at the mercy of environmentalists in the state of California? How do you explain the taxes, the highest in the union? How do you explain the price of gas in California? How do you explain the open borders and the immigration crisis out there? How do you explain all of these things? How do you explain businesses flocking out of the state? There's a lot of problems. And I'm making the argument that Kamala Harris, seen by the right as a diehard leftist, if somehow, some way, you get the governor's seat of California and you fix things in such a way, moving the left away from the far side to a more centralized position, and you get a state like California back in the right direction, could you imagine what that would do for Kamala Harris? Hell with the presidency in 2028. You could be the governor of California and run in 2032. One of the top largest economies in the country. You turn California around, you can run for the presidency in 2032, Kamala Harris. 2028, nah. Because of all the things on her resume that one would deem relatively impeccable, let's keep in mind, vice president is the number 2 slot. A U.S. senator is a U.S. senator. That's 1 of 100. Yeah, attorney general, that's law and order. I got that part. You did that for 6 years in the state of California, district attorney in San Francisco. But let me tell you something. You haven't run a state. So if you haven't run a state, even though Donald Trump didn't run a state either, one would question whether or not you're going to run a country, especially since you just lost the election. Go for the governor's seat. That would be my recommendation to Kamala Harris. Go for the governor's seat. Win that. That's a surefire thing. That ain't risky. The polls show that right now 57% would vote for her. She's got a huge lead over everybody else. And Gavin Newsom can't go. There's term limits. He's up. He's got a different problem. We'll talk about him at a later date. But Kamala Harris, if you're going to do anything, don't think about the presidency in 2028. Think about the governor's seat of California in 2026 and use that to position yourself to become the next president of the United States in 2032. That would be my suggestion. Bottom line is this. California is the way to go, Kamala Harris. It's the way to go.